You're listening to Immortal Technique, and this is Revolutionary Volume 2, bringing you the truth in the form of hip-hop. From Death Row, this is Mumia Abu Jamal.
In a world of 360 deals, consolidated media conglomerates, and corporate record labels with likability meters, my following guest has remained independent, relevant, and consistent in his message of liberation, freedom, and revolution. With the humanitarian efforts in Afghanistan as well as Haiti, we haven't even touched on the fact that he's one of the most influential hip-hop artists in the game today. Of course, I'm talking about my brother, Immortal Technique. What's going on, man? How you feeling?
Thank you, brother, for having me on your program.
Thanks for being here. You know, it's a well-deserved intro. I've been following your career for quite some time. And the first question that I want to ask you is, what does real hip-hop mean to Immortal Technique?
I mean, I hear the word, rather the terminology, real hip-hop thrown around. I think for a lot of people, it's come to symbolize, you know, an organic sound, not something that's contrived in its fashion. And by contrived, for people who don't understand what that means, when executives or individuals come and sit down with an artist, sometimes the A&R or the producer will give them advice and say, hey, listen, we need a quote-unquote track for the bitches, or we need something for the streets, or, you know, no mention of what this actually does to people, no mention of what negative reinforcements and stereotypes, because black people and Latino people can be used as racist stereotypes for their own people. In other words, you don't need a white face to be on TV to be racist and insulting towards you. They can hire a black or Latino person that's more than willing to sell their soul and dance around like a pickaninny or a coon just to make an example of how much quote-unquote money they're getting. But I remind people that all money is not good money. You know what I mean? You wouldn't prostitute your mother for $100 and then go throwing it around the club. All money is not good money. Right. For me, I think that real hip hop just means what's in your heart. If somebody really does have a life story about going from absolutely nothing to everything, that's fine. We've heard that with Biggie, we've heard that with Jay, we've heard that with every commercial artist, and we've heard that with every independent artist. Right. But if every single one of your songs is about, I'm getting this or I'm getting that, or there's nothing organic about it, if it's not a real feeling, if it's not your real story, if you're sitting there, you know, embellishing is one thing, you know, but portraying a complete fraud when everybody knows how you really are, then that's something different.
Well, I think we lost that way a long time ago. I mean, we had groups like Stetsasonic, X-Clan, Boogie Down Productions, Public Enemy. I mean, the list goes on and on. They were original in their own way and how they portrayed not only themselves, but the message that they were trying to get to the people. And it does seem like hip-hop has lost its way in that form. What's your opinion?
Well, I mean, look, I don't think that any of those young artists who, it's an interesting contrast that we have in hip-hop, because in the past it used to be hoodlums and knuckleheads that were totally capable of getting you jumped by like 40 different people that came to the club. Right. That were rhyming about conscious stuff. And then you have the softest, you know, jelly heart, you know, glow stick, club stick, fluid pumping people in the game that talk like they're a killer and a murderer. Right. And I think that that is really something that devalues not only human life, but especially Black and Latino human life. Why? Because I share this with the audience. When you get the image of a murderer or a killer in rap, what is your image? Some strong person killing another strong person. Reality, most murders don't act like that. They don't say, hey man, I'm gonna see you on the block at noon and we're gonna go gun to gun like back in, no, murderers poison you. They stab you in the back. They kill someone you love to get you to be at a certain place at a certain time. It's not an honorable thing to be someone who destroys another human life for petty monetary gain. You know what I mean? That's something that's reserved for somebody doing something horrible to your family or some injustice that just cannot be righted any other way. I always tell people there's two types of beef that can never be squashed. You can never unkill someone and you can never unfuck someone. Out of all those things I just said, you can resolve pretty much every other issue. And I think that when we don't explore that, or when we don't discuss the complicated reality, behind someone dying or behind my success to the top. In other words, we've heard people talk about having nothing and then having something. What we haven't heard is what part of you did you have to sell to get to where you are? Because I've always defined success not as what you have, but by what you had to sacrifice to get to where you are. So tell me, brother, what'd you have to sacrifice? You know what I mean? Tell me what you had to give up to be in this position. What did you have to deny yourself to maintain the discipline and the focus to be at a level where you're a premier international act, touring the world, making millions of dollars?
I want everybody to do me a big favor, because you don't need to prove nothing to me. Everybody turn around and face the other way. Face to the world, for our people need this. Repeat after me. Viva la revolución! Viva la revolución!
Just tell me a story that's entertaining. You know what I mean? I think that when we talk about golden era hip hop versus the hip hop that's out now, I think there are plenty of creative people in the game. I think that there are lots of versatile artists now. I just think that America was just such a more violent place back then. You know what I mean? If you compare LA, Atlanta, Chicago, New York, any of these big cities, even places that sound like a vacation spot like Miami, you compare any of these places 2013 to 1983, it's another dimension. It's some kids today wouldn't even understand. They would feel like they was driving through Nigeria or Chechnya or the Ukraine or something. They'd be like, this ain't the real city. I'm in another country right now. No, homie, you in New York in 1983 where the lights don't come on at night, where the cops don't come to this part of the, now New York is a police state. It looked like Disneyland. But there are times, Chicago, I'm not coming. So what, somebody's been murdered? Send an ambulance. And whenever they get the balls to go to that little area, they'll go there, but not before and not after. It's just a different way of being. In that, I think it provoked and promoted a little bit more conceptuality, but at the same time, took a little bit of the hard edge off. Not to say that there aren't artists that get down just as much, but that's the tricky thing about hip hop. You know what I mean? It'd be the person that's the realest and the craziest motherfucker in the world that's singing about love and peace, and that's because that's what that person wants in their life. They've seen murder and they've seen the other shit. Right. So, you know what I mean? Or they're just trying to warn you. You know what I mean? I'm gonna tell you the real because I've seen it too. And then you have the people that have seen it and say, I don't want no parts of this. That's not my forte. I don't want to relive that. I want my kids to go to private school. Smart move, by the way.
Right.
But however it may be, they want nothing to do with the street other than the image that they somehow participate in the most negative parts of it. And that is blatantly a defense mechanism because it screams, I'm dangerous and I'm scary, leave me alone.
You're born into a country strife with war, Lima, Peru. Your family flees to Harlem, New York, in the heart of the crack cocaine epidemic, the birthplace of hip hop. And you find yourself, like many black men, getting locked up over and over again. Then you get locked up for real, and you got to start looking for answers. You study the history of revolutionary leaders, past and present, and then you start to find your voice, and the transformation begins. According to your bio, this story is a direct parallel to the legendary Malcolm Little, who eventually, as we know, becomes the great Malcolm X. Were these harsh realities the catalyst that transformed you from Felipe Coronel to Immortal Technique?
Well, I mean, I find it very difficult only because of the immense amount of respect I have for Malcolm to even compare myself to him in any way, shape, or form. But one way that I would make that comparison and the distinction is in the interestingly unknown facts that Malcolm was not apolitical before he met Elijah Muhammad. That his mom was actually a very active woman, that his family was actually very involved in what was going on, and he had some understanding of what the struggle was about before he actually had his eyes completely opened. Because I think in terms when you say conscious, that really doesn't mean anything. That means you know something. Everybody in this room knows something. Everybody outside that's in this venue knows something. Everybody on this block knows something. They all know the same thing. Even a satirical joke we can make. We could all say politicians are corrupt or lawyers are corrupt. Everyone laughs. But what are we gonna do about it? That's the real difference. Consciousness does not imply that you are actually gonna take action and fix it. So I would say that before I went to prison, I definitely had the idea ingrained in my mind that I shouldn't have to sacrifice my culture to be part of America. That America was supposed to be a place that welcomes other people's cultures. So in that aspect, I drew not just from Malcolm, but also from Martin, because he simply put it as, you know what? I just want you to make this what you say it is on paper. Because you're saying one thing on paper about how people are guaranteed freedom, and then the actions are completely different.
Absolutely.
I mean, I remind people, America really didn't become a democracy. Some people say it's not even a democracy now, but technically did not become a democracy until 1967. You can't have a huge percentage of the population that isn't supposed to vote because of some archaic superstition that is held on to by a mostly poor class of Caucasian people that have been brainwashed and fed the idea that someone else is lesser than them so they can create the type of class division and racial division that makes this structure possible. In other words, they were lied to just about as much as we were in thinking that we don't come from where we come from. And I think that when we explore politics, or we explore moving to a new region, I think it definitely gave me a profound respect for other people's struggles. So it was learning from individuals like John Henry Clark and the example of Malcolm, Arturo Schomburg, and the legacy of many other people that were as blunt as they could be in their presentation of our story as a people, as a human race, who said, quite frankly, you're not talking about Black history, brother. You're talking about human history. We're talking about Sumerians, Mesopotamians. Those were not the white actors from the 1930s and 40s and 50s. And it's so sad that we're in a place right now where politically things are so volatile that somebody might actually be foolish enough out there to call me a racist for pointing out how racist America was. Well, you hung up on race. Or if someone says, hey, how come Jesus is white? Oh man, it shouldn't matter. It don't matter to me. Okay, then worship a Black Jesus. Get on your fucking knees right now and worship what that man probably looked like. And everybody from the Bible that probably looked, Moses too. All of them. Don't play with me. I don't have time for these games or jokes. You know, if somebody wants to have an honest political discussion or debate, I keep myself open for that. You know, if people want to troll me, I'm gonna troll you harder.
No question.
So I think that for me, I learned a lot from life experience before I ever touched prison. So that enabled me. It always says, hey man, you know, you come out of prison a man. No, you gotta be a man before you go to prison if you expect to make it out alive. How about that one?
But with albums like Revolutionary 1, 2, The Martyr, which, by the way, why did you release that for free as opposed to having another one on the shelf as an album?
Well, there were some samples that were not clearable, but most of the point was that these were songs that were very old. They were like maybe 3-4 years old. The only thing that's comparable is maybe 1 or 2 songs for the Middle Passage that I've been really holding on to. But they were technically from the era between Volume 2 and between the Third World. And then there was maybe like 4 or 5 of them that were just stuff that I had written on my own or had never really been finished. So
who inspires a guy like you to do what you do, how you do?
You'd be surprised. It could be the smallest little things. You know what I mean? It could be from, you know, an argument with somebody I love to being in Haiti and seeing them tents and being like, I can't believe that, you know, 5 families got to live in that. And niggas is complaining about being in the projects. You got 4,000 people lined up here for water. They lined up here to fill up this full of water. You know what I mean?
Right.
That is just heartbreaking, but it also motivates you to say something, to create a difference between you and the people that are as apathetic in this world to just walk by an individual like that.
Absolutely, I feel what you're saying. I looked on YouTube. I'm constantly searching for interviews related to hip hop that I like, and I'll be honest with you, sometimes I get disappointed and sometimes I get excited, but that's what inspires me to talk to people like yourself. But I also get excited when I see interviews from the late Tim Russert or Charlie Rose. Even Oprah has this sort of way of breaking down a wall and getting into the story behind the story. There's got to be somebody out there whether it be an artist or a political person or a revolutionary leader who inspires you to rap the way that you do and to perform your craft in the way that you do? Who is that one person that comes to mind? I'm very interested in hearing about that.
You have to understand, for me, I've always understood that revolutionary people are imperfect, right? They lead a wonderful movement, and sometimes that movement's successful. But dedicating so much time to that movement doesn't leave a lot of time for family, for children, you know? So I like to be a responsible father, an honest husband, and I'd like to be somebody that is an example for people to show them that we can truly be human beings and not a bunch of fucking animals masquerading as human beings, which is what we pretend to be now, because we're a country that loves violence. So when I say that I'm inspired, I'm definitely inspired by people that I love, that are close to me. And I can say that honestly with no question in my heart, more than I'm inspired by, you know, a bunch of old legends from people that have honestly, we all know this, they've all been over embellished and retold a million times so that we see this individual as an iconic figure rather than understanding their flaws and what really made them what they are. Great revolutionary, terrible father, all your fucking kids hate you. Why? Because you ain't never been around. Oh, thanks, Dad. You went off glorious revolution, missed every birthday I have, don't even know when my fucking birthday is, don't even know that I have a younger brother or a sister, or is even that my sister, or I have another brother by some other bitch who you was fighting a war with and you was lonely in the jungle with. Thanks, Dad. You know, you really showed me what a fucking man was. So I think it's about having balance in that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I'm sure that people are resentful, but at the same time, they could be comforted by the image or the illusion of what they thought their parent was. But we've had so many different revolutions in the world to look at and to be inspired by. So it really depends on the individual what they feel committed to. I mean, we're in Virginia right now. We had a revolution in America. It failed. It was called a civil war. And a lot of people put a lot of chips in that. They dedicated a lot of stuff. Some people still feel connected to that culture. They still feel like, wow, you know, even though that was a slaveocracy, you know, we're not necessarily a slaveocracy, but you know, we're proud of this, we fly this color, whereas nobody else would tolerate that. And I think that's only because you have a gigantic subsection of white working class Americans that are willing to toe that line. Because if it was, you know, a bunch of Democratic black people, they've been scared and they've had the Democratic Party use that sister soldier attitude. For those of you who don't know, look up the Clinton years. That's the sister soldier moment, when he used to alienate the radicalized part of the left base. What they do is they'll radicalize their own people, but then make it seem like we're savages for waving, you know, a Black Panther banner. The Black Panthers didn't enslave nobody. They ain't crucify nobody.
Right.
They damn sure ain't hang no burning cross in front of some. I'm sure some, you know, fly-by-night scholar from the right wing will point to a dozen names maybe that died in some sort of firefight. That's fine. But you can't name one African slave that was thrown off that ship, can you? You fucking idiot. The problem that I have with people that are, you know, pseudo-intellectual to the point where they make discussion difficult to take seriously is that they've not done the research around the topic to the point where when they find something that doesn't fit their personal narrative, they just don't want to deal with it and they want to take it out of it, you know? They want to forget that. And I think that in terms of revolution, in terms of music, in terms of power, all of these things are idolized, and therefore there's an air of mythology around them that never turns out to really be what it is. You know what I mean? I think that everybody has their vice and everyone has their price. I'll put it this way, even I have a price. The difference is that my price is not money. And that's where people have gotten it twisted with me, you know? There's something out there you could probably offer me to make me change my mind, but it ain't paper, you know? I guess for me, you gotta pay for things in blood. And by that, I don't mean you gotta kill someone, but I mean, it's gotta be done with your hands. You gotta, you know what I mean? It's got to be like a favor. You gotta do something real, something that goes beyond music or something.
Well, that actually leads me into my next question. We remember the counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO, where the FBI created a covert operation to destabilize black power movements in their infancy. It states clearly that they were searching for the rise of the so-called Black Messiah. They named Malcolm, Elijah, Martin as potential targets and potential threats. Now, with your album, The Martyr, and Revolutionary 1 and Revolutionary 2, you know, you're very outspoken against powerful forces and injustices against the people. I think I'm quoting Malcolm when he once said that the price for freedom is death and that the bloodshed is the cost of revolution. So my question simply is, do you ever fear that your stance and your approach to hip hop could be or will be the cause for your death?
You know, maybe when I first got into this game, I used to think about stuff like that. And now I just think to myself, whenever it happens, you know? When they line me up against that wall, I'm gonna tell them that blindfolds are for cowards and for sexual deviants. Just give me a fucking cigarette, I'm going out like a man standing up. But the bottom line is truthfully that if we get to that particular point in time where they're killing people for saying what's on their mind, for speaking truth to power, for pointing out the historical inconsistency and the political hypocrisy and what goes on, then I'm not the only one that's gonna be against that wall. You're gonna be against that wall. Plenty of you that are watching this program now, it don't matter if you black, white, brown, yellow, green, blue, you're against that wall too. Because the ironic thing is now, they're not looking for the Black Messiah. They're just looking for anybody that has something negative to say about the way that they make money. It doesn't matter if you're black or white or anything, or Christian, Muslim, Jewish. If you get in the way of their agenda, and when I say their agenda is focused around consolidating power. The world power, the global elite wants to consolidate power, consolidate wealth to the point that we all become dependent on them. They try to make anything that would make us independent seem ludicrous and irrational, and everything that makes us dependent and slave-like and drug addict behavior having, they encourage that. They want us to, you know, I remind people, your food really don't taste that good right now if you're eating while you're watching this. It's just the chemicals that they mix in with that dirty old meat. It's just the stuff that they spray your food with. That's what makes it taste that way, not what it actually is. You know what I mean? Just remember that. So I remind people, it's not solely based on one insane premise of a glorious revolution towards one unstoppable evil that needs to be confronted. That's a struggle that takes place daily in people's lives when they choose what they're gonna provide for their family, you know? And I think that in terms of being afraid of challenging that, you know, I think the most basic thing I could come up with to really set my head straight on that was, if I don't do this, who will? You know, if there's a bunch of other people that have the same talent level and they're willing to step up to the plate, well, then now is the time. You know, don't wait for someone else to be gone.
Right.
Learn from them and learn from my success and my failures as well, because I've had plenty of those. I don't hide those. I learn from those. I grow from those.
LL Cool J recently popped up in the news doing a record with a country singer, and he made correlation between, if you forgive my gold chains, I'll forgive your iron chains. And when I hear that, I just got to shake my head. I mean, is it possible to take gold chains, which is something that hip hop artists use as a fashion statement, to go with Levi jeans and shell-toe Adidas with no shoelaces in them,
right,
and compare that to iron chains, which are responsible for the rape, murder, and enslavement of a people?
right.
They took away our name, our culture, our God, and then you're gonna have somebody who is from the golden era of hip hop, and one of the founding, you know, I wouldn't say founding father, but you know, he was there in the beginning.
He's a pioneer.
He's a pioneer. To come out and say that, I'm gonna forgive you for iron chains, man, that just that doesn't sit well with me, and I just really wanted to know your opinion of that.
First and foremost, let me say that I have a lot of respect for LL. I think he's a
As
legend.
do I.
I think he's a legend, and there's nothing that can take away from what he did in the past. However, I think that he's severely misguided in this particular example of wordplay and the idea, the conceptuality of where he was trying to take the record. Obviously, this is someone else's record. He might have been contracted just to say something like that, which would really disappoint me, because that means that somebody paid you to do this, you know? And like I said before, they'll have us as a people so scared that we won't fly the Black Panther flag. You won't do that, even though we didn't go out and massacre tons of white people. All we wanted was a free breakfast program. But they got black people from the left wing and the right wing scared to wave that flag. Right. But they love waving the Confederate flag. That's the part that confuses me. America loves winners. Winners. Fuck you got a loser's flag for? Why y'all rocking that? Y'all lost. Your vision of two Americas was crushed.
Hip hop brings people that are black, that are white, that are Asian, that are poor, that are rich together, that are Muslim, Christian, Jewish. We bring them all together and we start realizing we have more things in common than we do that are different.
And if we're talking about a premise for forgiveness, you know, how can you forgive someone that never said I'm sorry? How can you sit there and take abuse or neglect or anything from a society without them acknowledging what you've actually put into America? You know, our blood is the mortar for the bricks that hold this entire country together. For me, it would have been a much more fitting line if he said, you know, if you give me my 40 acres and a mule, I'll forget about the iron chain. Right. Because you still owe us from way back in the day. Only now, what are we talking? A monetary compensation for slavery? How about this? How about I'll forgive y'all when y'all start teaching history the right way to your children? That's when I'll forgive you. That's all it takes of me. I told you, my price isn't money. You can keep them 40 acres and you can keep that raggedy ass mule. Just stop lying to your children, you know? Stop telling lies about us, you know?
They're paging you to get on stage.
Or I'm gonna keep telling the truth about y'all.
They're paging you to get on stage. We gotta let you go. Last question. I want you to look into this camera, because I know that there's someone on the couch watching this interview and hanging on your every word. The future of hip hop. Someone who's gonna follow in your footsteps. What would you say to that person about this business, about this game, and better yet, how would you inspire them?
Well, I would tell them that no matter what they are, whether they're white, black, Latino, Asian, any religion, creed, color, him or her, whatever your persuasion is, just remember that if you're not true to yourself, that eventually there are gonna be some cracks in that foundation. And whenever you do approach and meet a person, you obviously are sending when you project who you'd like to be. You know what I mean? Rather than who you are. But if you really work on being that person, you can eventually one day aspire to that. And I remind people, no one did this overnight. You know, I had help from all kinds of people within the industry, outside of the industry, people that have nothing to do with music that offer me really, really good advice. The people that you love, not trying to take advantage of you, you know, but rather really believing in you and thinking that it's possible. And also, you need the right people to hate on your ass, you know, and to be like, nah, I don't think you can do it, because, you know, when you don't respect somebody's opinion, it makes you work harder against them. So I would like to tell them, and if they're inspired and hanging on to my words, remember that we're all one human race, and that at the end of the day, the only people that are afraid of the truth are people that have been lying to you.
Man, I appreciate you being here today, man.
Thank you, brother.
Getting ready to get on stage. You're live with Jason Park, and I appreciate you being a part of this program. Till next time.